Morena Tawa School whānau, welcome to Tawa School Story Time. I hope you're having a good morning so far. Today I'm being joined by my cat Toby. He's decided to join me today while I'm doing story time. So you may hear him meowing. He likes rubbing up against my computer. So if it moves from time to time, that is why. So we're going to read, well, it's a very tiny version of it, but Harry Maclary's Bone for our younger audience. And then we're going to continue on with reading Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I don't know whether you've checked it out yet, but I see someone's already seen my rap version of The Little Yellow Digger Goes to the Zoo. You can check that out on this channel if you want a bit of a laugh. It's Mr. D being a little bit embarrassing, or my kids think it's a bit embarrassing anyway. But hey, it's all good fun. All right, so Harry Maclary's Bone, and hopefully Toby the cat will not interrupt. So, down in the town by the butcher's shop door sat Harry Maclary from Donaldson's Dairy. Out of the door came Samuel Stone. He gave Harry Maclary his tastiest bone. Then off up the street on scurrying feet on his way to the dairy went Harry Maclary. And chasing him home with their eyes on the bone were Hercules Morse, Bottomley Potts, Muffin Maclay, Blitzer Maloney, and Schnitzel von Crumb with his very low tum. Hungrily sniffing and licking their chops, they followed him up, past the school and the shops. They came to the sign selling Sutherland sauce. Through they all went, except Hercules Morse. They came to a hedge along Waterloo Way. Under they went, except Muffin Maclay. They came to a yard full of dinghies and yachts. Round they all went, except Bottomley Potts. They came to a building site cluttered and stony. Over they went, except Blitzer Maloney. They came to a war by the house of Miss Plum. One of them jumped. But not Schnitzel von Crumb, who has the very low tum. So at last he was free to go home on his own, Harry Maclary, with all of his bone. I can see there are some big Harry Maclary fans out there. All right, we're going to continue on with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. We're up to chapter 3, where we're going to find out about Prince Pondicherry. And Grandpa Joe was telling this story. Mr. Wonka and the Indian Prince. Prince Pondicherry wrote a letter to Mr. Willy Wonka, said Grandpa Joe, and asked him to come all the way to India and build him a colossal palace entirely of chocolate. Did Mr. Wonka do it, Grandpa? asked Charlie. Oh, he did indeed. And what a palace it was. It had 100 rooms and everything was made of either dark or light chocolate. The bricks were made of chocolate, the cement holding them together was chocolate, and the windows were chocolate, and all the walls and ceilings were made of chocolate, and so were the carpets, and the pictures, and the furniture, and the beds, and when you turn on the taps in the bathroom, hot chocolate came pouring out. Excuse me one moment. My cat wants to leave the office where I'm in. You hopping out, Toby, or are you going to stay hanging around? No, he's going to stay hanging around. We'll keep reading. When it was all finished, Mr. Wonka said to Prince Pondicherry, I warn you, though, it won't be very long till you better start eating it right away. Nonsense, shouted the prince. I'm not going to eat my palace. I'm not going to even nibble the staircase or lick the walls. I'm going to live in it. But Mr. Wonka was right, of course, because soon after this, there came a very hot day with the boiling sun, and the whole palace began to melt. And when it sank slowly to the ground, and the crazy prince, who was dozing in the living room at the time, woke up to find himself swimming around in a huge brown sticky lake of chocolate. Little Charlie sat very still on the edge of his bed, staring at his grandfather. Charlie's face was bright and his eyes were stretched so wide you could see the whites all around. "Is it really true?" he asked. "Why are you pulling my leg?" "It's true!" cried all four of the old people at once. "Of course it's true. Ask someone you like. Ask anyone you like. And I'll tell you something else that's true," said Grandpa Joe, and now he leaned closer to Charlie and lowered his voice to a soft, secret whisper. "Nobody ever comes out." "Out of where?" asked Charlie. "And nobody ever goes in." "In where?" cried Charlie. "Wonka's factory, of course." "Grandpa, what do you mean?" "I mean workers, Charlie." "Workers?" "All factories," said Grandpa Joe, "have workers streaming in and out of the gates in the mornings and evenings, except Wonka's. Have you ever seen a single person going into that place? Or coming out?" Little Charlie looked slowly around at each of the four old faces, one after the other. They all looked back at him. They were friendly, smiling faces, but they were also quite serious. There was no sign of joking or leg pulling on any of them. Well, have you?" asked Grandpa Joe. I don't really know, Grandpa," Charlie stammered. "Whenever I walk past the factory, the gates seem to be closed." "Exactly," said Grandpa Joe. "But there must be people working there." "Not people, not ordinary people anyway." "Then who?" asked Charlie. "Aha. That's it, you see. There's another of Mr. Willy Wonka's cleverness." "Charlie, dear," Mrs. Bucket called out from where she was standing by the door, "it's time for bed. That's enough for tonight." "But, Mum, I just want to hear—" "Tomorrow, my darling." "That's right," said Grandpa Joe. "I'll tell you the rest of it tomorrow evening." Chapter 4. The Secret Workers. The next evening, Grandpa Joe went on with his story. "Now you see, Charlie," he said, "not so very long ago there used to be thousands of people working at Mr. Wonka's factory. Then one day, all of a sudden, Mr. Wonka had to ask every single one of them to leave, to go home and never come back." "But why?" asked Charlie. "Because of spies." "Spies?" said Charlie. "Aye, all the chocolate makers you see had begun to grow jealous of the wonderful sweets that Mr. Wonka was making, and they started sending in spies to steal all the secret recipes. The spies took jobs in the Wonka factory, pretending that they were ordinary workers, and while they were there, each one of them found out exactly how a certain special thing was made." "And did they go back to their own factories and tell?" asked Charlie. "They must have," answered Grandpa Joe, "because soon after that, Fickle Gruber's factory started making ice cream that would never melt. Then Prodnose's factory came out with a chewing gum that never lost its flavor, however much he chewed it. Excuse me. And then Mr. Slugworth's factory began making sugar balloons that you could blow up a huge size before they popped. You popped them with a pin and you gobbled them up. And so on, and so on, and so on. And Mr. Willy Wonka tore his beard and shouted, 'This is terrible! I shall be ruined! There are spies everywhere! I shall have to close the factory!' But he didn't do that," Charlie said. "Oh, yes, he did. He told all the workers to go home. He was sorry, but they would have to go home. Then he shut the main gates, fastened them with a lock, and then suddenly Mr. Wonka's giant factory became silent and deserted. The chimney stopped smoking, the machine stopped whirring, and from then on not a single chocolate or sweet was made. Not a soul went in or out. Even Mr. Willy Wonka himself completely disappeared." Here's Grandpa Joe telling the story. "Months and months went by," Grandpa Joe went on, "but still the factory remained closed, and everybody there, poor Mr. Wonka, he was so nice. He made such marvelous things, but he's finished now. It's all over." Then something astonishing happened. One day, early in the morning, thin columns of white smoke were seen coming out of the tops of the tall chimneys of the factory. People in the town stopped and stared. "What's going on?" they cried. "Someone's in the furnaces. Mr. Wonka must be opening again." They ran to the gates, expecting to see them wide open and Mr. Wonka standing there to welcome his workers back. But no, the iron gates were still locked and chained and as securely as ever, and Mr. Wonka was nowhere to be seen. But the factory is working, the people shouted. Listen, you can hear the machines. They're all whirring again, and you can smell the smell of melting chocolate in the air. Grandpa Joe leaned forward and laid a long bony finger on Charlie's knee. But most mysterious of all, Charlie, were the shadows in the windows of the factory. The people standing in the street could see small dark shadows moving from behind the frosted glass windows. Shadows of whom? Said Charlie quickly. That's exactly what everybody else wanted to know. The place is full of workers, the people shouted, but nobody's gone in. The gates are locked. It's crazy. Nobody ever comes out either. But there were no questions at all, said Grandpa Joe, and the factory was running, and it's gone all running ever since for these last 10 years. What's more, the chocolate and sweets it's been turning out have been more fantastic and delicious all the time. And of course, now when Mr. Wonka invents something new and wonderful, sweet, neither Mr. Ficklegruber nor Mr. Prugnose nor Slugworth nor anybody else is able to copy it. No spies can ever go into the factory to find out how it's made. But Grandpa, who, cried Charlie, who is Mr. Wonka using to work in the factory? Nobody knows, Charlie. But that's absurd. Hasn't someone asked Mr. Wonka? Nobody sees him anymore. He never comes out. The only thing that comes out of that place are chocolates and sweets. They come out through a special trapdoor in the wall, all packed and addressed, and they're picked up every day by post office trucks. But Grandpa, what sort of people are they that work there? My dear boy, said Grandpa Joe, that is one of the great mysteries of the chocolate-making world. We know only one thing about them. They are very small. The faint shadows that sometimes appear behind the windows, especially late at night when the lights are on, are those of tiny people, perhaps no taller than my knee. There aren't any such people, Charlie said. Just then, Charlie's father came into the room. He was home from the toothpaste factory, and he was waving an evening newspaper rather excitedly. Have you heard the news? He cried. He held up the paper so that he could see the huge headline. The factory said, Wonka Factory to be opened at last for a lucky few. All right, we're going to stop there. Next chapter is the 5 golden tickets. Well, I hope you guys all have a really good weekend and enjoy your day of doing learning from home today. I want to say your teachers have been doing an amazing job in setting up activities for you. Do your best. Try your hardest. If you don't get them all done, it's absolutely fine. But look after yourselves. Have a great weekend, and we will catch up again on Monday. All right, ka kite anō.